Good afternoon. It appears there's only two of us here, but actually we have Councilwoman Pastor on the phone. Oh, no. Gallego is on the phone. Pastor is coming late. And I do have Councilman Valenzuela with us, so thank you for being here. So first item, I'm calling the meeting to order, is the minutes of the previous Transportation Subcommittee meeting. Do we have any corrections? Motion?
No corrections. Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Items 2 through 4 are for informational only. And I wanted to mention that the street pavements cuts will be coming back to a later one with more definition on and process, I guess, defined for us either late December or right after the first year.
Probably, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, probably back to T&I in February, because this is being discussed also at the Citizens Transportation Commission, and we'll likely go back to them in January and then back here in February for a recommendation. Okay,
because I know the utilities are very interested in visiting us. So I want to make sure that negotiations continue and we come up with a fair compromise. And then I want to take item 6 out of order. Usually this is the one that gets delayed till the next meeting, but we're going to surprise you and have it up first.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, Karen Peters, Deputy City Manager, is here with John Wayne Gonzalez and James Orlowski from the Government Relations Office.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, members of the subcommittee. I am Karen Peters in Tom Remus's place because he's off at another meeting and could not be here. This is a presentation of the both state and federal agendas related to transportation and infrastructure. As you'll recall, we do come to each subcommittee and present the items that are in the agenda or they're proposed to be in the agenda related to each subcommittee's charge, and then the whole council will have an opportunity to review, consider, and adopt a legislative agenda in December, I believe on December 13th. So with that, I think we're starting with state, and John Wayne Gonzalez will walk us through it.
Good afternoon. The first portion is the state items for the subcommittee. And before we go into the items submitted by the Streets Department, just want to remind the council members and those watching online of the guiding principles that the City of Phoenix has when it comes to the state legislative session, which begins in January. And that is opposing unfunded mandates, definitely making sure that the city preserves its local control, its local authority, and decision-making process. And of course, always looking out for the protection of shared revenues. Those are voter-approved revenues that are tax dollars that the state collects and shares with cities and towns. And then, of course, very, very important is always looking out to protect our water resources, given the shortages that are coming in the future to the Colorado River. Definitely, it's very important that Phoenix look out for its residents and its interests when it comes to water protection.
On that point, I thank you for including the restoration projects in the forest, because we need to be just as cautious and careful about the SRP chain because supply is diminishing in that area too. So thank you.
The proposal we're bringing before the subcommittee when it comes to state legislative items, it was provided by the Streets Department. And these are some of the recommendations that they are providing to the mayor and council for the city to get involved in this upcoming session. And I'll just go through them relatively quickly. One is the consolidation of architect and engineer fee limits. Currently, state law guides how much money can be spent when you're procuring services from an engineer or a contractor before you have to then go through a procurement process. Right now, those two numbers are different. One set at $250,000 and one set at $500,000. So the Streets Department is looking at maybe revisiting that item and looking at can they be consolidated? Should they be equalized and be fair for both sides? And that's a discussion that, of course, is going to take place with other stakeholders and not done in a vacuum. So that's one recommendation. Another recommendation is looking again at the limitations of forced work account work. Right now, there are certain projects that city staff can do in the area of maintenance for streets, for example. And there are some state law defines or puts some caps on how much work can be done by the city before we actually have to go contract out to a private entity. And the vast majority of the street repair and street maintenance is already done by the private sector. So in looking at this section of law again, trying to revisit and see should there be an adjustment? Should this be updated to reflect reality insofar as the costs? I think right now, anything above $220,000 has to go to an outside source. There are instances where it makes more sense where city staff can address immediate needs when it comes to street maintenance to repair and not have to go out to a private sector contractor in some circumstances. So again, that's another discussion to have with the stakeholders on looking at should that number be readjusted for today's world. Another item is advertising requirement. When we go out to notify for construction projects and put that out there, state law kind of governs how much, how you're supposed to put that in the newspapers and what have you. But staff wants to look at that to reflect the reality of a lot of folks are now looking through online services, or even if we're putting information in periodicals that are related to the trades industry and diverting those resources instead of traditional newspaper maybe into those areas so we can actually reach more people and maybe get more bids, more competitive bids. So that's another area to visit. And then right now, when you have a design build project, under that project, the construction entity of that project is in charge of the entire project. Then that's again governed by Title 34 and state law. Again, looking at revisiting that entire section to see, are there instances where shouldn't be the case? Maybe it should be the architect that should be the lead for the process, or maybe it's the entity that's going to maintain and operate the building or the facility once it's completed. At the end of the day, it's still going to be a construction company that's still going to build the project. They're not out of the equation, but maybe in some circumstances, someone else should lead that team to develop a project on time and quality project. And then finally, the last item is right now looking at trying to create what staff is kind of considering a best value approach when it comes to a delivery method. Instead of the definition in state law of the low bid projects, is there ability to add some new type of nuance that also adds best value, which we're talking about quality, we're talking about being able safety, we're talking about delivering on time. And again, not doing away with low bid, but definitely maybe massaging it for certain projects to have an opportunity to have a best value type approach. And again, these items that have been presented definitely have to work with the private sector, the entities, not just at the legislature, but those private sector companies in the stakeholder process to see if we can arrive to some consensus on some of these areas for success for everybody. And so these are the items that were brought forth by the Streets Department. With that, we can answer any questions. No? Okay. And with that, turn it over to James Orlowski to now go into the federal issues.
Thanks, John. Good afternoon. Similar to on the state side, we have guiding principles that sort of guide our efforts at the federal level as well. We have promoting fiscal sustainability. A big part of our federal program is looking for any possible federal grant funding opportunities. And so we want to make sure also that Phoenix is getting its fair share of federal funding. In terms of protecting local authority, what we mean when we say that is opposing efforts to preempt local decisions and protecting the authority of the council to make decisions that are in the community's best interests. The first issue that we have up is courtesy of our transit department, and it's the high capacity transit. Specifically, we talk about the South Central Light Rail extension. Obviously, that's a big priority for the city. We want to get that in the FY 2018 President's budget. And so that's first up. And then also looking for any funding opportunities for all the other light rail extensions that are in the pipeline right now, whether it's Northwest Phase 2 or any of the ones that are coming up in the queue as well. We want to look for any funding opportunities for those projects. On the next slide, we have 3 priorities that all sort of deal with federal funding that comes to the local level. The first one being the alternative fuel tax credit. The city, our public transit department, as well as other fleet services in the city are able to take advantage of this tax credit. The impact to the bottom line for public transit is approximately $3 million. And this tax credit is scheduled to expire at the end of this year, so we'd like to see that extended into the future. With the Highway Trust Fund solvency, the big issue there is just trying to get some long-term sustainability. The gas tax hasn't been raised in a number of years. On an annual basis, it seems like there are solvency issues with the Highway Trust Fund, and so we'd like Congress to take a look at sort of shoring that up and adding some more predictability and reliability in the long term. And then when we talk about the federal funding model, the big thing here is sort of looking for those opportunities to bring funding here to the city, whether it's Tiger grants, which we've been very successful at in the past, trying to increase funding for that. And also looking at ways that with Transportation 2050 and our local funding source, trying to look for ways that we can maybe leverage that at the federal level and try to capitalize on that local funding source. We also talk about freight transportation and CMAQ, which is congestion mitigation, air quality funding. And what we're looking to do in these two areas is really to support our local Council of Government, which is the Maricopa Association of Governments. These are two priorities for them that we'd like to be able to support them on. They're currently studying freight corridors in the valley. And then when we talk about CMAQ funding, it's talking about funding that helps us sort of meet the Clean Air Act requirements and reduce congestion in the valley. And so we want to look to support MAG on both of those two measures. We also talk about local funding priorities in your packet. There's a list of projects the Streets Department submitted to us that they're interested in us looking for federal funding for. And so again, we want to look for any opportunities to bring dollars to the city to expedite those projects. And then we also talk about Buy America, and there are some utility relocation cost issues and product availability issues there. And so what we'd like to do in that case is to try and harmonize some of the requirements dealing with Buy America and FHWA and FTA. Moving on to the next slide, we talk about flood mitigation and stormwater infrastructure. There's a huge, I think, $1.75 billion need for stormwater infrastructure projects in the Phoenix area. And so we want to, again, look for any funding opportunities, whether it's through FEMA, possibly the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. We want to continue our efforts in that area and look for ways that we can sort of bolster our flood mitigation and stormwater needs in the city. And then finally, on the last slide, these are all items that were submitted by our Water Services Department that Catherine Sorensen and her team put together for us. And the focus here is really on the Colorado River. You heard John mention on the state side that we're focused on Colorado River resiliency and making sure that Phoenix is sort of protecting its water resources. And these are all issues that we'd like to track very closely at the federal level to make sure that we're bringing in funding to the city to try to help with our Colorado River resiliency efforts, as well as look for innovative new approaches that we can take that would help with our water resource issues as well. And with that, we're recommending approval by the subcommittee of our proposed 2017 state and federal agenda items, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions? Okay, hearing none. Does this give you the flexibility to, if the president-elect does come through and really wants to do major infrastructure, that you can adapt to whatever his priorities are that also match our needs?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it does because we specifically talk in the federal agenda about looking ways to leverage local funding, some of our priorities, and working with the federal government to bring federal dollars to the state and to the city for those projects. And I'd also say it's something that we're going to track very closely during the calendar year in 2017 to see what's coming out of the administration, and then we'll certainly come back to you guys to see if there are opportunities that we can take advantage of and keep you apprised of those as we look for those opportunities.
And my second question is, I know we work closely with the county on dust, and I know the city of Phoenix has many streets that are unpaved. Is there a way that we can continue to push that so that we can get a greater share to pave some of these? Because development is occurring, and some of it is just pending because they're waiting for a street that we need to supply.
Yeah, Councilman, we can definitely take a look at that. We'll work with our streets department. There may be opportunities there with the CMAQ funding that we referenced, but we'll work with the technical staff on that, and we'll make sure that that's included.
I know they're
Final package.
trying in other areas, but that you mentioned the dust, I thought, maybe another opportunity. Any further questions? Do we have a recommendation to move this forward to council?
So move.
Thank you for all your hard work. Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Alrighty. We will now go to item 5, which is our plan for streets.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, this morning we held a nice event to mark the progress of the first year of pavement maintenance and repaving under Transportation 2050. And so even though my hands are still warming up from that 8 a.m. Event, it was a very nice occasion. Thank you, Councilman Williams and Councilman Pastor, for coming out and speaking at that event and just marking that progress. Here today to talk about next steps with that program is Ray Dovalena, Street Transportation Director, and Mark Locke, Deputy Street Transportation Director over street maintenance. And they're going to talk to you about expanding this program out further to fiscal years 2018 and 2019. Ray.
Thank you, Mario. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and council members. Today we're going to talk about, as Mario mentioned, the 2018 and 2019 maintenance program that we have for the pavement program that we have. So with that, I'm going to just pass it to Mark, and he's going to go into the discussion.
Hi, good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. I'd like to start off just by a quick overview of how we capture the information. I know that you've heard this information before, but just a quick recap of how we capture the information and prioritize and actually choose what roads we are actually overlaying. Up until the T2050 was passed, we were struggling on maintaining our roads. We were at a cycle of just an overlay of about every 65 years. Unrealistic, but that was kind of our funding source, and that's where we were. So with the passing of the T2050, we are able to go out and do a lot more of the surface streets than we have in the past. How we collect that information, we have a van. It's a very technical piece of equipment, has a number of computers inside. It measures the roughness of the roadway and maps all the cracks, and our staff, they go out and drive all the city streets once every 2 years. They categorize them between the arterials and major collectors, and then the minor collectors and residential. The types of treatments that we offer, historically we've done the mill and overlay. That's where you go out and you just mill down the surface and you put a brand new layer of asphalt on it and you have a brand new surface. The problem with that is that we don't get the best bang for our buck, so to speak. We are only able to do a small portion of our city streets. Now with the passing of the T2050 funding, we're able to go out and do additional treatments. We're able to do the crack seal, micro seal, and what we call the TRMSS. That's an oil treatment that actually covers the surface of the asphalt, helps it from the oxidation and the cracking, which preserves the life of that asphalt. So we're able to do more with the additional funds and stretch our dollars a lot further. Now with the classifications that we have just under 5,000 miles of city streets. Those are linear miles. And our funding for the arterials and major collectors are all the T2050 funding. That's how we broke out our program. And our minor collectors and our residential, those are all under our Arizona Highway User Fund, our AHR funds. What the slides you're looking at here, our goal is to be able to hit every one of our streets every 10 years. With our T2050 funding, we're looking at that, but the slide you're looking at here is our AHR funding. We have a lot more streets. We have a lot more residential streets, minor collectors. We have just under 4,000 miles of those types of streets. And to be able to do those every 10 years, we'd have to do just about 400 miles. As you see it on the chart, we're coming up just over 300 miles. Now, before the T2050 funding was out there, our total program with our arterials and our residentials was just over 100 miles. So you can see how far we have grown. Now with our T2050 funding, our arterials and major collectors, we have 869 miles, and our average treatment cycle, if we're doing it every 10 years, was about 87 miles. You see in 2017, 2018, we're missing it just by a little bit. By the time we get to 2019, we're far exceeding that. With the different types of treatments, again, we're able to go out and keep our good roads good and able to pave our roads, the overlay, with the real bad roads. Now, for our 2018 program, you have attachments A and C, which are showing the roads that will be done. But it shows the different treatments. You see that we're able to do with the T2050 funding, we're doing just under 83 miles at $14.8 million. And then for the AHR funding, we are doing just about 314 miles at just over 26 million. And the map that you're looking at, the green line is for our AHR funds, and our purple line is for our T2050 funds. And with our paving schedule, when we go through and we restripe the roads, we are adding just over 11 miles of bicycle lane miles in there. And for 2019, kind of the same scenario, but we're adding more miles for our T2050 funding. We're at just over 100 miles at 15.5 million. And then for our AHR funding, we are right around 314, which we were prior to, at 26.4 million. So our map from here, we have our blue line is our AHR, and our red line is our T2050 funds, kind of showing the distribution throughout the city. And again, in 2019, we will be adding just over 10 miles of bike lanes. Our schedule that we've had, we've presented this to the CTC November 17th. We are presenting this to the subcommittee today, and we are looking to present to the formal on December 14th. What we are requested action, we request that the subcommittee approve our recommended 2018 and 19 pavement maintenance program. And from here, I'll take any questions you have.
Councilwoman?
I have questions about the bike lanes. Because on that map, it showed several of the
2018?
bike lanes, the miles of new bike facilities. My question to that is, will there be public hearings regarding the bike lanes?
Madam Chair and Councilwoman Pastor, certainly there's some that are we're already have, but the ones that are new, we are certainly going to have public meetings to discuss with the community about those new bike lanes.
Because I know that there's a plan, but now I just want to get clear that we adopted a plan, and now it's going to the community to I don't know necessarily to determine or to discuss where those lanes or how those lanes will have impact on those areas.
Madam Chair and Councilwoman Pastor, yes, we would be addressing the community with those new bike lanes.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Do you have a contingency fund built into this for streets that unexpectedly require either to be built or to be reconstructed?
Madam Chair, and yes, we do have an allowance within each of the job order amendments that we do for the particular contracts. These are already set, but certainly if there's issues that come up with a particular area that's small enough within our range of doing the work ourselves with city staff, we do those, and so we do address those smaller types of projects. When there's other bigger ones, we have to work collectively with the job order contractor to make sure that we can make some provisions to allow for additional work within those contracts.
I'm sure you know where I'm headed and what I'm talking about, because economic development is busy out there in undeveloped areas that require infrastructure. And the one in particular is they even have an agreement where we promise to build the other half of the road, but there's no money. So I don't know if there's others out there throughout the city in that same circumstances, but I was hoping that you had something built in here for when those come up, when economic development has someone that's going to go in and build the building and run a business or manufacturing out of there, that we can comply with those.
Madam Chair, and I'll proceed after Mario, but we do have those types of projects, as you've identified. They're more capital improvement projects, and so we're working with our capital improvement program to see how we can identify those and place those major projects into our CIP, our 5-year CIP. This particular contract that you're seeing here is more of on a pavement preservation. It's more of the maintenance that we do with existing roads in those types of situations.
And so Ray is correct in that some of those projects are more of a CIP project as opposed to pavement maintenance. But we are doing a much better job with coordinating with community economic development regarding development agreements that are proposed and approved by the city council. I could think of an example or two of some that have come up where these agreements were approved in the past without a time frame attached to them.
Right, and
so,
no one's left that was part of the process for approval.
Right.
So there's surprises.
So we're needing to make sure that we can build that into a CIP because it is a city obligation. So now that's why it's so important that we do a much better job of coordinating and tracking when those occur, and so that we can plan for them and make sure that the funding is there at the right time.
So where do you get the CIP funding?
Madam Chair, it's a combination of potentially T2050 if they're identified in the T2050 new and expanded corridors, and then we also have the Arizona Highway User Revenue Funds that we're getting from the state. So those, in addition,
Those are different from this
yeah,
package.
the AHR is different from this batch. Yes.
Just want to make sure. Okay. Any other questions, comments, motion? Sorry, Ray.
Motion to approve?
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. This is called to the public. I have one card. Diane?
Good afternoon, Madam Chairperson, Thelda Williams, and committee. I'm Diane Barker, and I'm happy to be here and report to you about the success of Meet Me Downtown. And some of us did choose to be multimodal and to come by rail and bicycle. And the people that were there were part of what's happened 2 years of 17,000 persons that have really celebrated the downtown area, and Ed Zerker was there, and our friend David Kreider, and they spoke, and we had a big birthday a party there, and the people walked or ran to Hance Park. And I'd like to see in the future that there's more participation. You know, participation is really the key in anything, and worldwide. Our participation in voting, the canvass just came out for the presidential, and it was less than last year, locally in Maricopa County and nationally. And so, you know, that's a thing. We would like to have our leaders be more multimodal. I see at MAG's got a big problem, and the city of Phoenix is a huge part of MAG, actually half. We have more reported deaths on our highways substantially than any other part of the United States. And so what does that say? We need to not only, you know, train people better, but have access and infrastructure, but we need to choose to be part of what all of our plans are, your plans at this subcommittee and MAG, being multimodal. And what does that mean? It means hiding your keys one day and doing something else than what the routine is. We were brought up in a, you know, I was taught too, and still my mother's 94, when are you going to come to see me in your car? You know, the thing is, I come to see in many different ways, Mom. And it's our thinking that I believe that is the problem. So I'm asking you and appealing to you, each of you, to look to see what your habit is. I asked the Board of Supervisors if we could get their commitment to post online on their website when they chose to be voluntary multimodal, and which is the directive under the particulate plan and also ozone. And so we're all year round that we need to don't drive 1 and 5. And, you know, I think it would be a benefit to the problems that we have here locally, and we could be a hallmark nationally, and it's going to be necessary with all the people that are coming to our climate this winter. Thank you.
Does anyone have any items for future meetings? Hearing none, we stand adjourned. Thank you all.